Hey, y'all, I'm Jeffrey Rickman, and this is a series that's equipping people for what to expect with the convening General Conference of the Global Methodist Church this September. This is our third episode in. We've done two before this, and TJ and I have been, we've gone through the entire transitional book of Doctrines and Discipline, which is going to be amended at this convening General Conference. We've also gotten a little bit into judicial policy and procedure, a JPP document, which talks about how they're going to do their judicial stuff as a denomination. We cut that off midstream so that we could do this series now. So this is for a bunch of Methodist nerds that want to understand the procedure around how General Conference is getting put together and what it's doing. And so if you don't know him, this is TJ Owens. He runs things around here in ways that I don't. So we're kind of a team. We've been sitting here talking about TJ's getting married here in a little bit in August. I'm not going to give the date because we know how many of you are crazy and want to show up at his wedding. So, but we're talking, and he's been to a number of weddings where there has been no sermon at all, and I've never done a wedding where there is no sermon. I'm just kind of interested in y'all. I'm just putting it out there. What do y'all do? What are y'all used to? How many weddings have you been to where there is no proclamation of the word, maybe a salutary scripture reading, and then how many of you is it like the norm that the pastor preaches for 5-10 minutes? I'm genuinely curious. Go ahead and write it in the comments so you don't forget right now. TJ, anything else we wanted to say before we get into today's session?
About the wedding stuff
No,
or this? Okay.
Setup. You can talk about your wedding if you want to. Okay. Anything pertaining to the document?
I don't think so. We are starting on 7.
Okay.
0.7 on page 9.
VII. So you can download this document at the globalmethodist.org website. It's called the Convening General Conference.
Well, there's the Global Methodist website, and then there's the website specifically for the General Conference. The General Conference website is sotheworldwillknow.org.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
That's got the document on it. It's probably on their website too, but it's easier to find if you just go to the General Conference website, and it's like right there at the top.
Okay.
So,
and it's called the Convening General Conference Community, Plan of Organization and Covenant for Our Life Together. And they shouldn't be amending this. They have amended the Transitional Book of Doctrines and Discipline several times since it was originally published. They're not going to do that here. So is there, we're good to dive in?
Yeah. I mean, you want to know what we did on the other ones, just go watch them.
Yep. So. Okay. All right, well, let's, delegate expenses is where we are, and why don't you start us off?
All right, 7, delegate expenses. Full travel, lodging, and per diem expenses for delegates who will need it will be the responsibility of each provisional annual conference or district through connectional funding, special fundraising, or other creative means, provided that the expenses of delegates from outside of the United States may be covered through the general church or by partnership arrangements with other conferences. Okay, so if you're inside the States, your annual conference does it. If you're outside the States, the general conference does it.
Did it say that?
General church.
I think it may be
covered. May be
covered. Yeah.
Okay, or partnership arrangements with other conferences. So the Heartland Annual Conference has a partnership with Ethiopia. Is that right?
Yeah, Kenya, Ethiopia, both. Yeah.
Okay, so hypothetically, we'll probably help pay for theirs if they need it.
Yeah, I didn't think about missional partnerships being. I think it seems to me it's going to be kind of Wild West, and they're just going to be looking around for who has money, who wants to pay for this.
Okay. Let's see. Air travel will be arranged through the travel agency designated by the Transitional Commission on the Convening General Conference to allow for the most economical round-trip coach airfare directly to and from the site of General Conference. Okay, so there's a commission that's going to help people with the travel agency. That's kind of nice.
Transitional Commission on the Convening General Conference, yeah.
Okay, and that's for all It's for everybody, not just people outside. Because I guess, it's not in the U.S., so
Yeah.
everybody's traveling to a different country.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. In my brain, I'm still assuming it's still in the continental U.S., but it's not.
Okay. That's good for them.
Yeah.
Additional expenses may be allowed for delegates from conferences outside of the country where the General Conference meets for arrival and departure, not to exceed 2 days before or after the General Conference is scheduled to meet. Just reading that again.
Yeah, that looked weird to me. Like it's limiting. I guess they're worried about people like making a vacation out of it and adding fees that would be covered by the denomination, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it depends on what they're paying. Because are they paying for lodging?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you would kind of need to say, okay, you can only be here. We're only paying for these days, which makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Delegates may pay their own expenses for food and lodging to extend their stay before and after the conference.
There you
Okay.
go.
Yeah. When one or more delegates travel to the site of the General Conference in the same automobile, the owner will be reimbursed for the actual cost of travel, including parking, tolls, and mileage, according to a standard amount announced by the Commission on the General Conference.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll have to front some money up front, but you'll get compensated.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that makes sense. That's not anything crazy. Is this you or you want me to keep going?
Oh, yeah, I can do it. All right, so this is point A, delegation, organization. Point A. Each delegation will identify its own delegation head by the means determined by the delegation or by its annual conference. So there needs to be a singular head of the delegation. It's not a free-for-all.
Okay, delegation for annual conference. One annual conference is considered a delegation.
Yeah. We just put together a delegation of 10 people for the Heartland Annual Conference, and so all 10 of them are going to go together, but not all 10 of them are going. There's going to be a head of the delegation that's responsible for these following tasks.
That makes sense.
So point B, the delegation's head responsibilities will include, but not be limited to, the following. 1. Organize and orient the delegation, including alternate delegates, to their responsibilities leading up to and during the General Conference. 2. Serve as the primary contact person between the general church and the delegates, including facilitating two-way communication. 3. Review with delegates the plan of organization and covenant for ordering our life together of the General Conference. That's this document. So you future delegation heads, you're very welcome for this resource. Point 4, create a process to review and discuss legislative proposals coming before the General Conference. 5, submit as requested delegate preferences for serving on legislative committees. 6, facilitate the process for the delegation and the annual conference to submit nominations for general church councils and commissions. And finally, 7, authorize the substitution of alternate delegates in legislative and plenary sessions when appropriate, using the processes developed by the credentialing team. So basically, they're the connection point between each delegation and the general conference. And it says, these are the things, not limited to these things. That's basically it.
Yeah, here's a basic guideline on stuff you got to do. Mm-hmm. You can run with it.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on this before we go on?
I don't think so.
All right, point 9. Have fun.
9, marshals, pages, and parliamentarians. A, the Transitional Commission on the General Conference or its designee will be responsible for recruiting and overseeing marshals, pages, and parliamentarians to serve at the conference site. Marshals and pages will serve as volunteers without compensation, except that a free will offering of the delegates and visitors may be accepted to help defray their expenses. Okay. So that I'm assuming the parliamentarians are paid.
Well, it says they aren't paid, right? But then you can cover their expenses, I think.
Marshals and pages will serve as volunteers. It doesn't say anything about parliamentarians.
Okay. Well, that was a question I had because, well, no, wait, look at point D down there. I underlined it. Such parliamentarians will not be general conference delegates and will be volunteers. You see that?
Okay, so they're all volunteers, but only the marshals and pages can get a free will offering. Is that?
Yeah, they can take a free will offering, and then you can make sure parliamentarians are compensated or like reimbursed, I think, for whatever expenses they do.
I'd like to know the thinking behind that. I guess I don't know what the norm is.
Well, I'm just wondering if you can get a parliamentarian of any quality for free, because it's not.
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be. Marshals are responsible to provide order and security by ensuring that only authorized persons are present within the bar of the plenary or committee sessions of the conference. They may also assist in providing direction and otherwise safeguarding the orderly function of the conference. Okay.
That's kind of cool. I don't know if the UMC had marshals or not, but like these are like law enforcement kind of.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, as big as the UMC was, you think they would have some kind of like.
I think they just called the police. I think they had a police presence, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
I know at annual conference I don't think there was anything like that.
Yeah, they had police at annual conference.
Well, not police, but like marshals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had that one lady try to get me out of the way because I was taking photos, and she's like, "No videos here." I'm like, "Who are you?" Nobody. She was nobody. She was the district superintendent. Yes, they thought she was bigger than their britches or something. Yeah. I don't know.
And she was not in charge, and he had his way.
Yeah. So let's go on to see. Pages are to be available to serve the delegates by distributing materials, serve as voting tellers if needed, carry communications, and running brief errands, which sounds like a page.
Yep.
D, parliamentarians will be provided for both the plenary and legislative committee sessions. Such parliamentarians will not be general conference delegates and will be volunteers. The budget for the general conference will include providing for the expenses of the parliamentarians to attend and participate. Okay.
Yeah, that made it a little more clear.
Yeah.
I'm glad I remembered some of the reading I did ahead of time. All right, we are now at Covenant for Ordering Our Life Together. So this is part 2 pretty much of the whole document. It's on page 10 at the bottom. And so this is point 1, daily schedule. The agenda committee will set the daily schedule and agenda with all plenary and legislative committee meetings between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. They didn't stipulate what time zone, so this is going to be a problem. I'm joking. A particular legislative committee or the plenary body may vote by 2/3 to hold an evening session in consultation with interpretation services. So you're going to have a norm as to a time. I don't know why they don't allow for super early morning, but you can do an evening one with a 2/3 vote.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Ready to go on?
Yeah. I guess I got this one. This one's 2. Rights and duties of delegates. Delegates and reserves will be seated in order of their election, except in a case of special needs as determined by the delegation chair in consultation with the affected delegates. Reserves will occupy the seat of the delegates for whom the substitution is made. Reserves will not be seated for delegates presenting on the platform. And reserves chosen to be seated will be of the same order, either lay or clergy, as the absent delegate. Okay.
That all makes sense, right?
Yeah, there's nothing crazy about that.
Anything helpful to clarify for people?
No. If there's a reserve, make sure they're sitting where who they're substituting for. They've got specific seating.
Very formal.
Yeah.
You're going to have, when it refers to the bar of the conference here in a little bit, that's the established physical area where voting delegates can be.
Yeah.
But we'll get
assigned seats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Point 3, parliamentary procedures. 1, purpose. The purpose of this covenant and Robert's Rules of Order is to provide a fair and orderly way for the General Conference to make decisions under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Accordingly, neither this covenant nor Robert's Rules should be used to block the body's ability to make decisions, to silence a minority perspective, or to disadvantage any person or group. Presiding officers should work toward consensus and seek to provide fair opportunities for all views to be heard. They should assist members of the body in understanding and applying the processes outlined in this covenant for communal decision-making and using them in that spirit. So 2 things to say here. One is I kind of spoke against Robert's Rules of Order on the last one, and a number of people commented in the comments, left comments saying, hey, Robert's Rules can be really good. And my problem is not with the can. My problem is with is it, And so one of the things we notice over and over is non-American delegates really struggle with it. And so here it's making clear the purpose of it is not to trip them up. The problem I still have is there any way that they can make it easier for non-American?
Well, I feel like even Americans struggle with it if you've never had anything to do with it before. Before all of the UMC stuff and GMC stuff, I had never heard of Robert's Rules before. We
Really?
We didn't do that stuff in school.
Well, anytime you do public committee work in local government or some clubs, Robert's Rules is what you use, but that's not really something you ran into before, huh?
No. And I mean, I don't feel like a lot of people that are involved on a local level, I guess, sure, to a degree, but I don't feel like they went and studied it too much.
Well, and very few people have actually sat down and read the book, but there are basic commands. They're not called commands. I'm just thinking of computer programming or something that you learn the terminology for. You pick up. I've never sat down and read Robert's Rules. I should buy a book to go through it. But anyway, you're completely right. It is very difficult for Americans. Can you imagine how difficult it is for non-native English speakers? Even when there's a translator in place, it's just difficult.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some difficulty in any kind of translation, just base level. Whenever you throw something like that on top of it that you've never studied before, of course it's going to be hard.
I have a problem with, here's the purpose, here's our intention, but there's no mechanism for making sure that happens. There's no recourse for if delegates, what happened at the last day of General Conference for the UMC was a bunch of non-American delegates got up and said, we didn't know what was happening. Can we revisit this? And they're going, oh, shucks, no, sorry. Robert's Rules is very clear. Do you want to take a vote? Oh, you can't clear the vote? Oh, too bad. And so it's just one of these things where you can force stuff through if you want to.
Well, yeah, and there was with the UMC stuff, I don't feel like a lot of those outside the U.S. were, their delegations weren't communicating well with each other.
Yeah, they weren't.
So whenever you add that, and then the UMC intentionally trying to disenfranchise their voice so they could push through whatever, So I mean, beforehand, study some Robert's Rules, no matter where you're at, whether you're outside the U.S. or inside the U.S., and get your delegation together so they all you're in a group chat somewhere. Hey, this is get one person that knows, okay, here's what we're coming up for a vote for. Make sure everybody knows what that is, and then say, here's how you probably should vote on it. Get this stuff done ahead of time so you're not floundering last second. I feel like that's good with anything.
Well, so much of their energy typically gets put on just figuring out travel arrangements. When they have energy for preparation, getting to the embassy for their interviews and working out transit and corresponding with denominational entities that are coordinating all these things. So finding it, if the delegation, the head of the delegation is not facilitating training, and there's not some coalition group like the Africa Forum, or an Africa Initiative, then you've got individual delegates that maybe have internet access and they're trying to figure it out, but it's convoluted.
It doesn't have to be.
No, it is. No, it actually, by nature, as you said, Americans struggle with Robert's Rules of Order. And if you followed much of it, there were times where it's just what motion are we even on right now? Are we on an amendment to the motion? And
well, yeah, because you would have an amendment come, or you would have the motion come for the whatever bill it is come forward, and then somebody wants to put an amendment to
Right.
that, and then they want to amend that, and so you're like 3 lines down, and nobody knows what they're voting on.
Exactly. Or you'll have, people come forward, a parliamentary inquiry or point of order,
Yeah.
and then it just disrupts the whole order. And it's like you need a diagram in front of you to show you what you're doing. The other thing that I remember thinking on this, I'm glad I remembered it, at the United Methodist General Conference on the very first day, they tried to make an amendment to the rules where everybody had access to see what the presiding officer saw, with everybody signing up to speak.
Well, yeah, and that was just like a list of like, okay, somebody called in, said, hey, I want to talk. Like, here's my name, whatever. That, and there's the list that they got to go through. And like, I guess, yeah, that would be nice. They were really pushing back against it. And I'm like, it can't be that hard to just show them, like, just do it.
Yeah,
Now you're gonna argue
you're
for
worried
20
about a bunch
minutes.
of people like saying, but I mean, the concern is the presiding officer is going to make judgment calls, and either you just trust that they do it all perfectly, or you just show everybody what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of the transparency thing. I mean, and so far this document talks about a very transparent system. So I hope they do something like that so that it's clear, like, okay, they didn't call on anyone to speak on this who was not an American, because no non-Americans even entered into the pool. But also, I mean, one of the things I don't like about Robert's rules, I don't think the presiding officer can say, we haven't heard anyone from the Philippines. I'd like to hear a delegate speak from the Philippines to this issue.
So you're going to force somebody from the Philippines to get up and talk if they don't want to?
Yeah, I kind of like, well, so at least call on them. I mean, you can't say, delegate so-and-so, I want you, I don't care if you have nothing to say, get up here. That's not what we're really talking about. We're talking about, hey, this is a lopsided conversation. If we're really searching for consensus, like it says here, we need more voices. But if you constrain it to 3 voices on any side of a given issue, limited to 3 minutes, and they have to sign themselves up for it, then you're just going to get people of a certain personality.
Well, what if you got something that's very controversial and you've got 30 people on each side wanting to speak for it and against it? Like, you can go through all 30 of them?
No.
Where's the line?
No, well, so I think I'm once again in favor of like an arbitrary authoritarian presiding officer gets to like call on what voices get lifted up.
I like
give them
you. Talk. I like you. Talk. I don't like you. Sit down.
Absolutely, yes. This delegate over here, like there were certain delegates at the UMC General Conference that were just idiots. Every time they got up, they wasted everybody's time. They were no good. I would just love it if someone at the front could go, you don't really have good things to say. I'm just going to let you sit out for a bit. You're always insightful. Do you have anything? Oh, no. Well, that stinks for us. Okay, yeah, let's take you. You know, you don't like
I
it.
don't like that because that is completely dependent on, like, you might have a good chair and you might not have a good chair.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if I think the chair's an idiot and I don't want him to talk? Like,
Yeah, the problem there is if we've got idiot chairs, then that's the problem.
I mean, from watching the UMC stuff, a lot of them had no idea what was going on. Like, they were just like limp wristed and didn't want to, like, I don't know. They wanted to push stuff through. They didn't. It was just a mess. Like, they didn't know Robert's rules of orders at all. They kept looking back and asking other people, like, what do we do? We don't even know what we're doing right now. I'm like, well, you shouldn't be doing it. Like, good for you. You're on the Council of Bishops.
Well, but
Who cares?
even their parliamentarian was often confused. So in my mind, just get rid of this illusion of formality and let personalities go. You know, just let them, and then show everybody the screen with what they're working with. See the way that they maneuver through the work of the day, and then, you know, they won't be perfect, but at least everybody can see what they're doing. We're not going to get this figured out. That's just kind of me thinking through it. So anyway, we're on point 2, consensus. Wherever possible, the conference will strive for consensus decisions that embody the unity of the whole church. Beyond such, as per paragraph 606, the convening general conference will operate under Robert's Rules of Order and such supplemental rules as adopted by the conference. So we've already talked enough about Robert's Rules of Order. It's written in this document. That's the backbone. Point 3, quorum. The convening general conference requires the presence of a majority of the whole number of delegates to constitute a quorum for the transaction of business, but a smaller number may take a recess or adjourn from day to day in order to secure a quorum. And at the final session may approve the journal, order the record of the roll call, and adjourn sine die. I'm kind of confused by this one, actually. In my mind, the quorum should be a bit higher if it's a general conference. Just meeting 50% plus one is a problem. But then also being able to do the work of the general conference with fewer than that assembly seems strange to me. I'm sure this is normal because I haven't read documents like this before, but the whole thing just seems really, it would make more sense to me to say that in order for there to be a quorum, there has to be 80% of the worldwide delegates present, and you can't make any decisions impacting the whole denomination outside of those gatherings,
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. It probably needs to be higher than 50 plus one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they did it like that. Surely, if half of the conference is not showing up, or if 49% of the conference isn't showing up, then you've got a bigger problem that you probably should address and be like, we probably shouldn't do this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what happened at the UMC General Conference last week. It wasn't 49 plus, it wasn't 50. It was like 70% of the delegates were there.
Yeah.
And so there's just a stink on every decision that they made.
Well, and a lot of that was probably intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and just regardless of intentionality, like you just should not be making decisions for the whole body if you don't have, in my mind, at least 80% there. Yeah.
Fair.
Okay.
No pushback.
Point 4, a consent agenda. Petitions receiving the vote of a 90% or more of a legislative committee may be placed upon a consent agenda for approval, disapproval, or referral at the beginning of each day, provided that an item may be removed from the consent agenda upon the motion of 10 delegates. This was a super influential thing at this last United Methodist General Conference because they put dozens of things on each consent. Well, they call them consent calendars, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If it passes legislative committee by a certain margin, then it doesn't go to the plenary session for debate. It just goes in an omnibus package pretty much for approval. And, it's a slam dunk thing. But the frustration is when you have very one-sided legislative committees, they can adopt things that are not representative of slam dunk legislation. And unless you have organized delegations and constituencies to look at what's on the consent calendar and say, hey, we need to pull this one. We don't like this one. Unless you have that, they're going to put any number of petitions through before you automatically, and you don't have time in the moment to look it up and see if you want to do it.
It would move really fast. You'd have to do that beforehand. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember, I think they had to have that stuff out that morning. I don't remember exactly what it was. You'll have to go back and look at the
I want to say, so everything is supposed to get printed the night before by 10 p.m., and I'll be surprised if they're not sending out a digital version of the same thing at that time. So in order for them to get proper consideration, it's going to have to get submitted the night before, I think.
Yeah. I'm just not in favor of this in general because it's just, there's too much wiggle room to sneak stuff in, and I don't like that. Like if it's important enough to be before the general conference, discuss it.
I mean, that makes sense, but the problem is you have personalities that want to pick things apart and re-examine things, and if you have to entertain every single petition on the floor of plenary, then this needs to be a month long. Because that's how long it's going to take. Yeah, you're okay with that. All right. Point 5, the agenda. The agenda committee will recommend an agenda at the beginning of each day's business, which would then be adopted by majority vote of the body, with or without amendment. The secretary of the general conference will maintain and guide the agenda, which includes the orders of the day and reports of the committees. Business placed on the agenda will be considered in the order of the adopted agenda unless by 2/3 vote of the conference an item is taken up out of order. So this is one of the things I hope they do better than the United Methodist General Conference. They adopted an agenda for the day or a calendar for the day. It was still very vague. And I don't know. Well, it was printed, but it was so vague as to not really be useful. So what would be really great is to have, we're going to do this petition, then this petition, then this petition. It'd be nice to have it be very specific. So if they could do that, that'd be excellent. Point 6, presenters. Proposals supported by the vote of the legislative committee will be presented to the plenary body by the chair of the committee or his or her designee. If there is a minority report from the committee, that will be presented after the committee's report is presented, but prior to action on the committee's motion. Anything we should say about that?
Make sense of that for me.
So legislative committees are going to make recommendations on given petitions. Some petitions are going to get put through on the consent calendar. No big deal. It's a slam dunk. Others are going to make a recommendation that it didn't pass by a margin, but there was a majority opinion on the legislative committee. They want to show their work and why it was that they recommended, even though there was some argument about it. So that would be the
Chair of the committee doing that?
Yeah. But then sometimes there will be a significant minority that has a problem with it for good reasons, and they will also be given a chance to speak to the petition before they put it out to the plenary.
Okay. I guess that makes sense.
So next we'll be speaking, point 7. Delegates wishing to speak must first be recognized by the presiding officer, and unless raising a point of order or parliamentary inquiry, delegates may not speak unless given the floor. Delegates so recognized must begin by sharing their name, conference membership, race, sex, sexual orientation.
Gender identity.
Yeah. Y'all know I'm
Disability.
kidding. It's just name, conference membership, and reason for speaking. That's it. And that's par for the course. That's normal. The additional stuff I said was United Methodist stuff that's not normal. So they have to say those things before beginning their speech. Delegates recognized by the presiding officer may not yield the floor to others to speak. So you can't get somebody that gets called on by the chair and then, I don't know if you ever saw it, there was a debate Steven Crowder set up with some leftist idiot, and he was going to dominate, and then the leftist idiot was like, actually, I secured a much smarter guy, and you're going to debate him now. And Crowder was like, no, I didn't agree to this, and they hung up.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
I can't remember either of the guys' names. I shouldn't have brought it up. But here you can't do that on the floor of General Conference. You couldn't like get up and say, actually, I want Jeffrey Rickman to speak, so I'm going to give my time to him.
Yeah.
You just it's limited to that guy. So, and then I kind of don't like the nobody can speak out of turn unless it's this way. I kind of like more organic stuff. I wish somebody could just speak up.
Until you get those crazies that just want to talk about nothing.
Yeah.
Or think they've got some profound insight and it's actually stupid.
So in that event, I think every delegate should be given one egg to throw at a delegate that they really don't like. And everybody can only spend their egg once. I'm obviously I'm joking. So anyway, but yeah, that you're right. That is a problem. So, all right, let's go on. 7.1, the presiding officer should operate in a transparent way, taking care to consider the various sections of the meeting room, as well as the breadth of the global church in calling upon speakers.
So that's kind of what you were looking for.
Yeah, there's just no enforcement mechanism. So that's
It was going to be up to the presiding officer.
Yeah.
So
and I don't want to. I mean, anytime
up to that
you're talking,
authoritarian that you were all in favor of.
yeah, if this does work the way that it could, with an authoritarian, it could be really great depending on who's the presiding officer. So I look forward to watching how this goes.
It's going to be interesting.
7.2, unless debate is extended by vote of the delegates, discussion on motions will be limited to 3 speeches for and 3 against the proposal, with each speech no longer than 3 minutes. Of course, these rules will all be adopted at the beginning of the convening conference, and like I think they just call them the rules for the general conference. So, but yeah, this is just giving us an idea of what to expect. 7.3, no delegate may speak more than once on the same subject under the same motion unless responding to a question or misrepresentation. However, the chair or delegate presenting the petition or minority report is entitled to make closing remarks before the vote is taken for up to 3 minutes. So I like that if someone has misrepresented you, you can get back up and say, no, that misrepresented me. So someone can't get up and slant things dishonestly and confuse the room.
Yeah.
You can rectify.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah. All right, 7.4, the number, limit, and length of speeches may be modified by the body by majority vote at any time and for any duration. So that's not a supermajority, that's just 50% plus one. You can edit the number, limit, and length of speeches. Cool. They are going to get into stuff where you have to have a 75% margin later, but for this is a simple majority. You can change these rules.
Okay.
All right, take it.
8, ending debate. The motion to call the previous question is not debatable, but it is likewise not in order without an opportunity having been given for at least 2 speeches for and 2 against a proposal. The motion requires a 2/3 vote of those present and voting for its adoption. Motion to call the previous question is not debatable.
So the motion to call the previous question is just say, let's vote on it. Let's stop talking. Let's stop arguing.
Okay.
So if you want to be able to move the question, you can't have a debate about, are we going to vote? It's going to go straight to vote if it's been done the right way, where there's been 2 speeches for and 2 against.
Okay, so you have to have at least 2 speeches for and 2 speeches against before you can end debate on it.
That's what I understood.
You can't just like, here's the proposal, we're ending debate right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess. I mean, you've only got 1 other speech for and 1 other speech against, so it's 6 minutes. Yeah, in the shortest
Potentially,
time.
yeah. Yeah.
Whatever, they did it for a reason.
I'm sure, yeah. Yeah.
9, point of order. A delegate wishing to raise a point of order may do so when recognized by the presiding officer and must first cite the rule involved and then state the point as briefly and concisely as possible. A point of order is decided by the presiding officer without debate unless submitted to the body for advice or decision. The rule by the presiding officer may be appealed to the body, in which case only the presiding officer and the appellant may speak to the appeal before the vote is taken, with each speech no longer than 3 minutes. Okay.
Super nerdy. Any thoughts?
I don't think so. Going to read a point of order.
So point of order is usually, Chair, you've done something wrong. You, according to Robert's rules, you did this,
Right.
we should have done this, or we're entertaining this when we didn't even cover this thing way back. And so after that, the presiding officer makes a ruling, but whenever they make a bad ruling, you can appeal it, and then there's certain conditions for how to behave when you appeal it.
Okay, that makes more sense. I'll read motions too.
Please.
10, motions. The right to make or second motions is restricted to voting delegates. So that's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Motions coming from a committee or commission do not require a second. All motions and amendments should be presented in writing to the secretary to ensure accurate wording. I feel like that's pretty straightforward.
It is. I've been at a lot of annual conferences. I've never been to a general conference, but at annual conference where somebody's making a motion from the floor and then they're waiting on them to write it down and get the language
That's
exactly
awful.
right. And it wastes so much time. So I'm hoping that they have a system where they can actually just text it to the secretary from like their phone or something.
That would require the person presenting it to have it ahead of time, which I guess some of them do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
a lot of them do. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of the annual conferences that I've been to, it's always something like, okay, can you get this to us in like writing? And they say it like it's inconvenient. I mean, it is inconvenient, but it's like they don't want them to put it forward. Like, okay, you're wasting everybody's time now.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Oh, this boring democracy.
Yeah.
Let us just put it through, please.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, yeah, it's a good. You have to have the exact language to vote on. So if not this method, then there is no other.
Yeah. I'll do elections and you can do voting. So 11. A valid election occurs when the number of valid ballots cast for a nominee meets or exceeds the required percentage of the total valid votes cast. To be valid, ballots must contain votes for the same number of nominees as there are vacancies to fill. And no more than one vote may be cast for the same nominee, nor for individuals who have already been elected. Pretty straightforward.
It is. Yeah, I don't need to say anything about it. I took an undergrad course on different voting systems, and I was frustrated when we voted for nominees at this
voting systems, as in like how not necessarily the technology that's used, but like how are we taking these up?
Yeah, like there's a lot of different ways you can actually vote on a collaborative group decision. So whether you're talking about like ranked choice voting or
so ranked choice is where you vote for the top 3 or whatever, and if your first one loses, it all automatically goes to your second one.
Yeah, there's different kinds of ranked choice voting as well, but yeah,
Gotcha.
To constrain it to this particular model, every voting system is designed to work in a certain way and has implications. So it's just interesting that this became the dominant model right off. I don't know what the United Methodist model was actually. I think it's the exact same.
And this one is?
It's not ranked choice.
Right.
I don't know what the name for this would be. So like hypothetically, you could... hypothetically on this, you could only, you'd have 5 positions open and you could only vote for 2. And then whoever gets the top 5 votes wins. You could do this in 100 different ways that would be different. So
yeah, if there's 5 nominees, you get 1 vote. And if your person loses, sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could have like 10 votes. And I mean, every person gets 10 votes, but only the top 5 win. You can do all kinds of things.
I feel like this is simple. I like simple.
It's simple until you have to have 50% plus 1. You have 3 open spots, and everybody keeps voting exactly the same so that none of them clear that margin, and that happens all the time. Yeah. And so round after round, and then you've got people with their devices not working and saying, wait, and everybody's waiting for 2 or 3 minutes while their device is getting fixed and figured out. It's
so you're for ranked choice.
Yeah, I like ranked choice. Yeah,
we don't do that in Oklahoma. There's other states that do that.
And it's good for establishing moderates in control. The extremes don't win in those positions. So in a political setting, I actually don't think I like ranked choice voting, but in an ecclesiastical setting, I think I do.
Okay, interesting.
We're at 12 now on voting. Voting may be done by electronic ballot or show of hands. I like show of hands. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Like, people vote differently when they have to be exposed for how they're voting rather than if they do it anonymously. And I just think there shouldn't be secrecy in the church. I understand why people want it, but they're going to talk about standing later as well, which is even more obvious. This is what my vote is, and I prefer. So I like that it can be either or, but you better believe they're going to go electronic and secretive.
Yeah. I guess, who does it say? I don't know if it says who that's up to. I guess they would vote on that at the beginning.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, vote how though? So they got to vote. No, anyways.
That's above my pay grade. 12.2, if circumstances require that a vote be taken by show of hands, before or immediately after such a vote is taken, any delegate has the right to call for a count vote on any question. That person is almost always hated. If electronic balloting is not available, a count vote would consist of a standing vote with the pages acting as tellers. If electronic balloting is not available, a call for a secret ballot vote using paper ballots must be approved by majority vote with the pages acting as tellers of the secret ballot vote. Pretty straightforward?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If any one person can call vote into question, then you might as well do like electronic at that point. If you've got one person that's going to do that every single time, then you might as well just do electric.
And usually there aren't people that will do it every single time. But if there's like a vote that is like 65 to 35% margin And it's pretty obvious, but still, 35's enough. Let's make this.
I feel like hands are standing up is only okay if it's blatantly a majority. Anything in between is like, we might as well do it electronic.
No disagreement. Okay. 12.3. A simple majority of those delegates who are present and voting suffices to pass all motions with the following exceptions. So 50% plus 1 is sufficient to pass everything except these. A non-delegate may be invited to address a legislative committee by invitation of the chair or a 1/3 vote. So that is under the threshold of a 50% plus 1. B, a tie vote sustains the presiding officer. I wasn't exactly sure what that meant.
If you're trying to get rid of the presiding officer and there's a tie, is that a simple majority of those delegates who are present and voting suffices to pass all of the motions except the following? Okay.
I think it's just saying like if you're trying to vote out the presiding officer, then you don't have to have that 50% plus 1. 50% is sufficient to keep them in position.
50% is sufficient to keep them in position.
I think so. I think that's what it's saying. I could be wrong.
Simple majority of those delegates who are present and voting suffices to pass all motions with the following exceptions. So these are exceptions to the simple majority.
Yeah, which is 50% plus 1.
Right. So
this is saying you don't have to have that plus 1.
You would have to have. Okay. I get it. So if it's a tie vote, the presiding officer stays.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm on.
Can you imagine being the officer in charge of a legislative committee and they have a vote to remove you and fully half the people want you gone and you're like, I get the tiebreaker vote because this is it's going to be evenly, and now half the people in the room want you out. I mean, I can't imagine wanting to serve in that situation.
I'm following now. Okay, so and then the first one was if somebody who is not a delegate wants to speak, either the legislative committee,
either the chair or a third of the committee.
Okay, so to let someone you don't have to have 50 plus 1 in order to do that. Okay, just 1/3 or the chair.
Right.
Okay, I'm on board. My mind was completely somewhere else.
Well, the first time I read this, I did not understand this. So I just said, okay, when we're on air, I'll try and figure it out. And I'm so pleased that we figured it out. All right, C, a 2/3 vote is required. So point A was chair or a third.
Yeah.
Point B was 50% without the plus 1. Now, all the other decisions are 50% plus 1, except for these which actually require a 2/3 vote. So I1 is to adopt, suspend, or amend the rules after their initial adoption.
Okay, so they vote on the rules at the beginning of the general conference or every day?
No, at the beginning of just the conference. They're going to decide the rules for those 2 weeks.
Okay, so hypothetically, somebody says, I don't like that we're doing 3 speeches, 4 and 3 speeches again. I think it should be 4 for each one.
Exactly.
They've got to vote to suspend the rules, and you have to have a 2/3 vote of every delegate in order to do that.
Well, so to suspend the rules, I think you only need a 50% plus 1.
Or I guess that would be amend.
You have to.
This says to adopt, suspend, or amend the rules.
Okay.
So you have to have 2/3 of the delegates to do any of those. Any 3 of those.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so point 2 is to adopt or amend the Constitution. 3 is to set aside a special order of the day. 4 is to sustain a call for the previous question. So when you call the question, that means you force a vote on the issue before you. But if you want to call the previous question
that's already been voted on, I think that's how I understand it.
I honestly don't understand that one. I didn't understand it the first time. I don't understand coming back to it. To sustain a call for the previous question. So if somebody's trying to take it off, put it into I don't understand. I'm going to go on, and then we can come back to that if we need to. Actually, no, this is going to be the last section. 5 is to consider business out of the order of the adopted agenda. 6 is to consider business originally ruled as not within the parameters of the limited legislative agenda. So I think that would be some of the petitions that we submitted. They were not under the original parameters. If they're going to be entertained, it requires a 2/3 vote.
Right.
And then the final one is to hold a session outside of the hours specified in this covenant. So if you want to have a late night or maybe even an early morning session, you got to have a 2/3 vote to do that. Okay. So did you do some research?
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to do more because it's not clear to me.
Okay. Well, all right, folks. That probably needs to be the end for today. We try and keep these things to an hour. It looks like we're going to be able to cover all the rest in the next segment. So if you guys have any questions about how the general conference is going to be done,
or clarity on things that we did not have clarity on.
Yeah. Sometimes we're the instructors, but a lot of times we're the learners because we're not experts in this stuff either.
I didn't read this before at all, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And I've never studied Robert's Rules of Order, so I've got a vague understanding, but that's about it.
So anyway, make sure to email us at plainspokenpod@gmail.com. If you have questions or answers, stuff to help us out. I think I might see if I can't secure an interview with an expert on our last one and see if maybe we can get a list of actual questions together so that there's clarity going into the general conference. And then hopefully the knowledge that we've gotten from this and going through the transitional book of Doctrines and Discipline, hopefully we can give good live coverage to the general conference when they're streaming it in a few months and actually know what we're talking about.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll give people like a baseline of like, okay, I've heard about this stuff. I kind of have an idea what's going on. So
yeah, we're going to do this thing transparently out in the open. There's going to be no suspicions about people using parliamentary procedure against the will of the body or anything. It's going to be, I'm fully confident it's going to be a really nice gathering.
This will be a good one. It's the ones down the line that we have to worry about it if we don't get it together now. So
we'll conclude for today. We'll pick up where we left off next week. You're going to let us know your thoughts in the meantime, and we'll see you next week.